Welcome to Parchment Update, an interview series from the Parchment Community Library to bring your community closer to you. I'm Karen Woodworth, Library Ambassador. I'm joined today by Jim Saric. He's the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Remedial Project Manager for the Kalamazoo River. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. Well, people have noticed the equipment parked behind Advia Credit Union related to the cleanup of hotspot S-IM1. Please tell us briefly about the scope and purpose of the Kalamazoo River project in the Parchment area.
So, Karen, this hotspot 7-IM1, and really, you'll have to forgive me for the nomenclature that we have with that, but during the process of investigating the PCB contamination within the Kalamazoo River, uh, we found various deposits or hotspots, if you will, of PCB contamination. And so we ended up giving them various names based on a sample or two that was collected in there. And so an artifact of that sample collection was this S-IM1 or SIM1, right, where it came from. And really that was based on a couple samples that were initially located along a bend, an outside bend of the river. And basically the PCBs are deposited where the river slows down, where the velocities slow down and the soft sediment can get deposited. And so this particular deposit, or hotspot as we call it, SIM1, is located on a bend in the river where the river slowed down along that bend. We have been working, it's part of a much larger cleanup in what we call the Remedial reach, or there's a 3-mile stretch from just upstream of where Portage Creek enters the Kalamazoo River, all the way downstream to near Parchment, where this SIM1 is the most downstream hotspot. And we've primarily been working near Kalamazoo, downtown Kalamazoo, near the Patterson Street Bridge. Many people have driven by there and probably seen that construction where we've been removing PCB material from that. It's all part of about a 38,000 estimated cubic yard PCB sediment and soil removal that was ongoing. But SIM1 is kind of a downstream, smaller area. And the work started in around middle of August. And part of that work, since it was across on the river, we set up a staging area and a sediment processing area. So people have probably seen a few trailers and containers on that side that exist. And then we had to have the work. What happened to me is a bridge, almost like a floating bridge, had to be placed in the river. And this work is being conducted by Georgia Pacific and International Paper and their consultants, and EPA and Michigan Eagle, which is the kind of Department of Environment for Michigan, that we've been doing oversight of all this work. So initially we had to place a floating bridge across the river, which they did. And then once they got there basically was, we divided this area, the SIM1, into 4 smaller dredge management units, we call them, what are typically a quarter to a half acre in size. And we had to remove the PCBs from there, and digging down anywhere from 2 to 4 foot for the most part, where we removed the PCB contaminated material from this hotspot, and we would dredge it out and then load it onto trucks, cross those trucks over, add other material to dry it, mix it, and then it was transported by other trucks to permitted landfills where it would go for offsite disposal. And that work started approximately in mid-August, and it's done now, where they're done doing that dredging work, where they've excavated the material. They've either backfilled it with sand if it was actually in the water, or clean soil if it was above water, kind of in the floodplain. And then they restored the bank with gravel so it wouldn't erode. They added topsoil on there. They seeded it. It's covered with seed right now, so they restored it. And they're basically going to really pull the bridge out sometime this week. They'll be done with the restoration this week, and they'll be in the process of then dismantling that sediment process area, and the whole idea that the entire SIM1 project will be done by the end of November.
Well, that sounds great. So what should we expect to see when the project's all done, when we look at the river?
You'll probably see that initially, if you look at it, it almost looked like a green or brown carpet that you'll see if you went out to the river and took a closer look at it now. But grass is going to grow through there, and And really in the springtime, it's going to look very natural, where you're going to start seeing vegetation develop, grasses along there, trees are going to grow back. And that's really what you're going to see. And it'll take, in the spring, they may have to go back there and touch it up. Because, sometimes the grasses all don't make it through the winters that we have here in Kalamazoo. You never know what's going to happen. So that will come back. But if they have to touch it up and reseed or patch it up that way, that might happen. But hopefully they'll get all the restoration done. It will be revegetated. It'll grow back. And by next summer, it'll look like another natural section of the river.
Well, how does this compare to similar projects? Was it pretty straightforward? Was there anything unusual? Do you use the floating bridges often? That just sounds fascinating.
What was unique about it wasn't a large area. There were only about 3,000 cubic yards of material that we had to move out of there. So it was not a large area. It was kind of an isolated feature, if you will, but it was unique. We haven't had to use that floating bridge before. So, and one of the things about doing any of the cleanup work along the Kalamazoo River is really having the logistics of the access, right? Where getting equipment, a big crane from one side of the river to the other, because we couldn't get access from that side. So near Parchment there was the best access location off a road. So that's why they put the bridge in. And then once they get across it, they had to lay material where the cranes could go across to get there and the trucks could get across. It was a unique project that way. So it wasn't large, but since it was more isolated and downstream from the other area that we're working, we couldn't basically load material onto barges and then go and push it by barge all the way upstream a couple miles. It didn't make sense to do that. It was much easier to have build a temporary processing facility right there, put the floating bridge in the water. And, that's what the contractor decided was the most efficient way to handle that material. And they got in and they got it done. And it really looks good.
All right. Well, I know you've mentioned this is not the only Kalamazoo River cleanup projects. These have been going on for years, and I imagine you still have some more to go. So how can people find out more information about these Kalamazoo River projects?
We have a website, the EPA, Kalamazoo River website. You can go to that. You can Google search it. You'll find it, and that has an update on what projects we're working on now, what's kind of coming up. We also have a Kalamazoo Community Advisory Group, which meets monthly, and they have their own website as well. But you can also find the link on our website to theirs, and you could virtually attend one of those community advisory group meetings. And it's a great way to learn about what's happening in the river and in the different areas or different topics that may be all part of the cleanup.
All right. Well, before we wrap up today, what else would you like us to know?
We're continuing to work in the river. Like I said, upstream of Parchment, you're going to still see barges in the river where they're doing dredging, and that's going to continue off and on. They'll maybe obviously slow down in the cold winter months, but there'll still be a little bit of work ongoing. And then next spring and next summer, that's going to continue.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to share the information with us.
Sure, great, Karen.